Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Alyssa Ashe. Thank you so much for tuning in to my nightly news recap. So glad to have you all here. Now, if you watched my broadcast earlier about Hurricane Florence, thank you so much for watching that. We will have continued coverage about Hurricane Florence over the next few days. However, this broadcast is devoted to all other news and stories that you may have missed throughout the day. Now, as you know, today is September 11th, which marks the 17-year anniversary of the terrorist attack on the Twin Towers. So please keep those affected, those who lost loved ones, in your thoughts and prayers. Now, I do have some information I'm going to be sharing with you guys and a video about the remembrance ceremony at the World Trade Center site that marks the 17th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. So this is from New York, WABC. So I'm going to share this with you guys, and then we're going to watch that video. And it reads, "It's a somber day filled with tears and tributes as New York and millions across the country mark the 17th anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks. There were moments of silence, volunteer projects, and a new monument to victims after a year when two attacks demonstrated the enduring threat of terrorism in the nation's biggest city. The events of that terrible day and the weeks, months, and years that followed are never forgotten, nor the memories of those killed by terrorists at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and a field in Pennsylvania. Additionally, we remember all those who have died from 9/11 related illnesses from their heroic work at Ground Zero and those who suffer today. Family and friends of the victims, survivors, rescuers, and others once again gathered on the Memorial Plaza where the World Trade Center's Twin Towers once stood, this time on a misty Tuesday morning. Margie Miller was among them, having traveled from her home in Baldwin, as she does 10 or so times a year to remember her husband Joel Miller. Only a few fragments of his remains were recovered, and she said, 'To me, he is here. This is my holy place.' Now, the ceremony began with a moment of silence and tolling bells at 8:46 a.m., the time when the Trade Center was hit by the first of two terrorist-piloted planes. Nearly 3,000 people died in the attacks on 9/11 when international terrorism hit home in a way it previously hadn't for many Americans. September 11th still shapes American policy, politics, and everyday experiences in places from airports to office buildings, even if it's less of a constant presence in the public consciousness after 17 years. A stark reminder came not long after last year's anniversary. A truck mowed down people, killing 8 on a bike path within a few blocks of the World Trade Center on Halloween. Then in December, a would-be suicide bomber set off a pipe bomb in a subway passageway near Times Square. Authorities said both suspects in the attacks were inspired by the Islamic State extremist group. And the 9/11 commemorations are by now familiar rituals centered on reading the names of the dead, but each year at Ground Zero, victims' relatives infuse the ceremony with personal messages of remembrance, inspiration, and concern. And hours after the ceremony, 2 powerful light beams will soar into the night sky from Lower Manhattan in the annual Tribute in Light. And President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence headed to the 2 other places where the hijacked planes crashed on the September 11, 2001, in the deadliest terror attack on American soil. The President and First Lady Melania Trump joined an observance at the September 11th Memorial in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where a new Tower of Voices was dedicated Saturday. Pence is attending a ceremony at the Pentagon. Memorials to 9/11 continue to grow at Shanksville, where the Tower of Voices will eventually include a wind chime for each of the 40 people killed there, and Ground Zero, where work is to begin soon on a pathway honoring rescue and recovery workers. And it will serve as a way to honor those who became sick or died from exposure to toxins released when the Trade Center's Twin Towers collapsed. Researchers have documented elevated rates of respiratory ailments, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other illnesses among people who spent time in the rubble. About 38,500 people have applied to a compensation fund, and over $3.9 billion in claims have been approved. Meanwhile, rebuilding continues. A subway station destroyed on 9/11 finally reopened Saturday, and in June, doors opened at the 80-story 3 World Trade Center, one of several rebuilt office towers that have been constructed or planned at the site. A performing arts center is rising, and a new exhibit at the National September 11th Memorial and Museum shows the dramatic impact sports had on the nation's recovery. Now, I am going to show you guys that video. It has a little piece of President Trump's speech at Shanksville, and it has a little bit of the ones remembering friends and family. You'll be able to see them as well.
Bells tolled at New York's Ground Zero, where hijackers crashed 2 passenger jets into the World Trade Center buildings, killing more than 3,000 people. Family members of the victims in the planes and in the buildings read the names of their loved ones, as they do every year.
We grieve together for every mother and father, sister and brother, son and daughter who was stolen from us at the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and here in this Pennsylvania field. We honor their sacrifice by pledging to never flinch in the face of evil and to do whatever it takes to keep America safe.
President Trump is at the opening of the new memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, to remember the victims of United Flight 93. You'll remember that plane was believed to be headed for the United States Capitol, but it was taken down by the passengers on board. And here in Chicago, firefighters honor the men and women who gave their lives trying to rescue victims on that tragic day. Mayor Emanuel was on hand as flags flew and a moment of silence was held for all those heroes.
And also want to just take a moment to share with you all a little bit more information about President Trump and Melania's visit to Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And now this is from USA Today. Now, if you guys have any connections at all to 9/11, if you maybe were there or if you lost a loved one, please let me know on Twitter at Alyssa RSBN. I will throw that up for a minute so that you'll be able to see it. That's my Twitter handle at Alyssa RSBN. Would love to really honor those that you may have lost and just share their names with everyone. So let me know. So some information from USA Today. President Donald Trump paid tribute Tuesday to the people lost on 9/11, giving special honor to passengers who charged the cockpit of their plane to stop hijackers from attacking Washington, D.C. They attacked the enemy, President Trump said, on the Pennsylvania field where United Flight 93 crashed on September 11th, 2001. He says they fought until the very end and they stopped the forces of terror and defeated this wicked, horrible, evil plan. After praising the U.S. military, President Trump vowed to protect the nation against what he called radical Islamic terrorism. And as bells tolled and Americans stood in silence across the country, the President and First Lady Melania Trump visited the Flight 93 National Memorial near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Now, the ceremony came 2 days after the dedication of a Tower of Voices. Now, this tower is built at 93 feet. It features 40 wind chimes, each representing a passenger or crew member on the doomed flight. Now, as at ceremonies at the World Trade Center in New York City and at the Pentagon outside Washington, D.C., mourners in Pennsylvania read off the names of the dead as bells tolled and visitors prayed. As President Trump flew aboard Air Force One to Pennsylvania, White House staff members gathered on the lawn at 8:46 a.m. the minute the first hijacked plane struck a tower of the World Trade Center. Now, referring to the dead in New York City and at the Pentagon as well as Pennsylvania, President Trump said, "We honor their sacrifice by pledging to never flinch in the face of evil and to do whatever it takes to keep America safe." The president devoted most of his remarks to the passengers of Flight 93. Now, after hijackers flew planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, 40 passengers and crew aboard Flight 93, believed to be headed to the U.S. Capitol or the White House, organized a charge into the cockpit to confront their captors. And amid the struggle, which started with the phrase, "Let's roll," the plane crashed into a field in Somerset County, north of Shanksville. It was the moment when America fought back, President Trump said, and the Flight 93 passengers joined the mortal ranks of American heroes. And President Trump also told stories about individual passengers and their loved ones. The flight attendant who called her husband and said they were preparing to throw hot water on the hijackers. A man who told his wife, "Stay on the line because I'll be back." Passengers who recited the Lord's Prayer. A woman who recovered her husband's wedding ring 2.5 months after the attack. President Trump said this field is now a monument to American defiance. This memorial is now a message to the world. America will never, ever submit to tyranny. Nearly 5.5 million Americans have enlisted in the armed forces since 9/11, President Trump said, and nearly 7,000 service members have died facing down the menace of radical Islamic terrorism. And some lawmakers have objected to President Trump's use of the phrase radical Islamic terrorism, saying it can be seen as blaming all Muslims, but President Trump did not use the phrase during a 9/11 event at the Pentagon last year. Now, Vice President Mike Pence attended a ceremony at the Pentagon saying he wanted to pay a debt of honor and remembrance, and Pence said the nation must heed the lessons of 9/11 and remain ever vigilant in defense of our nation. Now, previous presidents also made statements on this 9/11 anniversary. Former President Obama on Twitter today said, "We will always remember everyone we lost on 9/11, thank the first responders who keep us safe, and honor all who defend our country and ideals that bind us together. There's nothing our resilience and resolve can't overcome, and no act of terror can ever change who we are." So the 9/11 commemoration has been an annual event for presidents since President George W. Bush grabbed a bullhorn to speak to workers in the rubble of the destroyed World Trade Center. Now, when some of the workers said they couldn't hear him, Bush declared, "I can hear you, I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon." And it looks like I got some messages from you guys on Twitter, so I'm going to take a second to check those. Thank you so much, anyone that sent me story tips. Just got one from our head moderator, or Mod Mom. Thank you very much for that. She sent me the presidential proclamation on Patriot Day 2018. Which was yesterday, and so I'm going to read this to you guys, but also show it to you so that you can follow along. And this is from the White House, and it is the presidential proclamation from President Donald Trump. On Patriot Day, we honor the memories of the nearly 3,000 precious lives we lost on September 11th, 2001, and of every hero who has given their life since that day to protect our safety and our freedom. We come together today to recall this timeless truth. When America is united, no force on earth can break us apart. Our values endure, our people thrive, our nation prevails, and the memory of our loved ones never fades. Although that fateful Tuesday 17 years ago began like any other, it erupted into horror and anguish when radical Islamic terrorists carried out an unprecedented attack on our homeland. In New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, the enemies of liberty took aim on America, but their evil acts could not crush our spirit, overcome our will, or loosen our commitment to freedom. Through the dust and ashes, we emerged resilient and united, bruised but not broken. On September 11, 2001, the world came to understand the true source of America's strength. A people of indomitable will and a society rooted in the timeless values of liberty. Our love of country was manifest through the examples of Americans engaging in countless acts of courage, grit, and selflessness. Their actions gave us hope and helped to sustain us in the days of healing that followed. We were moved by the heroism and the passengers and crew aboard United Flight 93 who sacrificed their lives to prevent further act of terror. We were inspired by police and first responders as they rushed headlong into burning buildings to rescue the injured and trapped. And as they courageously braved fire, smoke, and debris, descending deep into piles of rubble, ash, and twisted iron to search for survivors, we were stirred to service by the deeds of those who labored in the ensuing days and months, often in dangerous conditions, to help our nation rebuild and recover. The noble sacrifices of these true patriots are forged into the great history of America. And he goes on to say, today we honor the memories of the souls we lost on September 11th, 2001, and pay tribute to all of the patriots who have sacrificed their lives in defense of freedom. We pray for the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen currently serving our nation in harm's way. We thank the dedicated men and women who keep our homeland safe and secure. We applaud the unsung patriots in city halls, community centers, and places of worship across our country whose simple acts of kindness define the greatness of America. By a joint resolution approved December 18th, 2001, the Congress has designated September 11th of each year as Patriot Day. Now, therefore, I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, do hereby proclaim September 11th, 2018 as Patriot Day. I call upon all departments, agencies, and instrumentalities of the United States to display the flag of the United States at half-staff on Patriot Day in honor of the individuals who lost their lives on September 11th, 2001. I invite the governors of the United States and its territories and interested organizations and individuals to join in this observance. I call upon the people of the United States to participate in community service in honor of those our nation lost, to observe this day with appropriate ceremonies and activities, including remembrance services, and to observe a moment of silence beginning at 8:46 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time to honor the innocent victims who perished as a result of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. In witness thereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 10th day of September in the year of our Lord 2018, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 243rd. Definitely a beautiful proclamation there that he shared just yesterday, declaring today Patriot Day. Thank you very much, Mod Mom, for sharing that. And I got a couple more messages on Twitter. I'm going to check real quick before I share them with you guys. And just looking through something real quick before I share it with you guys. It's actually from one of our viewers. So this is, I'm going to pull it up so you can see it as I go through it. This is from one of our viewers, Rick Bulow, who actually wrote a blog, Never Forget What Happened on September 11th, 2001 or September 11th, 2012. And just a little bit of background. Rick Bulow is an Andrew Breitbart conservative from North Fort Myers, Florida, and he created Rick Bulow New Media as a tribute to what Breitbart had done in promoting new media and citizen journalism. So I'm going to pull this over so you guys can see it. And he says, I wrote this on September 11th, 2012 as an editorial for my Red Right, like right side, and Blue talk radio show. And he says, never forget what happened 11 years ago. And this was when he'd written it in 2012. He says, I know I will not. In fact, I remember exactly where I was on this day 5 years ago when I first heard about the plane striking the World Trade Center. I was at a McDonald's enjoying breakfast and listening to a local sports radio broadcaster broadcast live from there when he broke for his 45 minutes past the hour break. I was about to walk over to him during the break and say that I wanted to speak about Michael Jordan's return to basketball and play for the Washington Wizards when I looked at his face, which is that of shock. At first report, it seemed to me like a small plane and that it was a freak accident. But when I heard the second plane hit the World Trade Center, I knew that this had to be some sort of planned attack. I spent the entire 9 o'clock hour glued to his little broadcast station as he had a set of headphones, which I listened to the producer back at the station speak to him and updating him. There were other callers who chimed in with updates from the televised newscast. After the show ended, I hung around for a small time listening. Then when the host dad offered to drive me to the college where I could watch the TV in the library, as well as get updates from the internet. While en route, I phoned my mom and stepdad to tell them what had happened. My stepdad told me that he'd heard about it and that mom was going to get me and tell me, but she saw I was gone. When I went into the library at the college to watch the news, I almost fell to the floor upon seeing the planes striking the towers and the Pentagon. About 11:45, I got word that the college was closing and called my grandma in Chicago to ask her if she and dad knew what was happening. She said that dad was on the way to the store, but that they knew what was going on. After I spoke to grandma, I went home and kept the news on the TV all the time, gasping and getting angry as to what happened. I urge people to never forget this day for as long as they live. I encourage everyone, no matter where they are, that if they have the American flag, to unfurl it and wave it proudly. For as Franklin Delano Roosevelt said of another terrible day in American history, this is a day which will go down in infamy. It was amazing how 5 years later, the horrific effects of 9/11 still affects people. A lady who checked on the terrorists onto that first flight that hit the towers killed herself because she couldn't deal with the guilt. Also, another checker who did the second flight is still 5 years later in intense therapy. This I had found out from a woman who I had seen in a chat room where I visit often. I guess this is a lot like post-traumatic stress syndrome. Those words written, and he wrote those words, kind of going back this chunk right here in the blog on September 11th, 2006, he says, still hold true today. While the main proponents of the September 11th, 2001 attacks are either dead or still imprisoned awaiting trial, we must not remember what happened that fateful day. We had been at war with Muslim extremists ever since 1784, when the American vessel was seized by Moroccan pirates. That led to the formation of the United States Navy in March 1794 and us taking the battle to them. The Middle East has always been in the interest of the United States, as seen by historian Michael Oren in a speech given at Columbia University entitled The Middle East and the Making of the United States, 1776 to 1815. In fact, Oren had said that the Middle East's impact on American affairs is nothing new. Not many of us know or realize this, but it is true. The Middle East will always have an impact on American affairs, regardless of who is in the White House or who has control of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The only question is how the people in control of those offices handle the affairs coming out of the Middle East. Even though many people hate President George W. Bush, he knew how to handle the affairs out of the Middle East. In fact, if it were not for the intelligence and the protocols already in place, Obama would not have had the opportunity to order the death of Osama bin Laden. Between 2010 and 2011, then from 2013 to April 2017, I would do a music radio show called The Wave Cave on a role-play site called The Portal of Dreams, as they had a radio station first called Dream Space Radio, then Eclipse Radio. Every September 11th in 2001, and then from 2013 to 2016, I would log on every day at 6 a.m. Eastern and play patriotic songs, as well as songs remembering those who died at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and in a remote field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. During the show, I would also intersperse some memories of that day from my listeners through email, Skype, also on Twitter, as well as the blog post I had quoted. I know it has been 17 years since that fateful day, but I know I will never forget it. Nor will I forget what happened on September 11, 2012 in Benghazi, Libya. No, I will never forget it. Nor will I forget when Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 others died when the diplomatic compound was overrun by Islamic terrorists representing the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, otherwise known as ISIS. This day is hard on those who survived both attacks. I know it has been 17 years since the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and 6 years since the attacks on the diplomatic compound in Benghazi. But as Abraham Lincoln said at the Gettysburg Address on November 22nd, 1863, the world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. If we forget what happened on those 2 dates, then their deaths will have been in vain. To continue the quote from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, it is for us, the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they here gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Thank you so much, Rick Bulow, for sharing that. It was very, very well written, and really glad that I was able to share it with everyone. So thank you very much for writing that and for sharing it with me. And yes, it looks like RSBN cameraman, one of our moderators and our cameraman, is commenting here asking if the colors look better, and they definitely do. Thank you so much for being here today, cameraman. Really, really appreciate you. and the fact that I don't look like a ghost anymore. I have some color to my face. So thank you for that. Really, really appreciate that. And I am checking my Twitter right now. And it looks like we had some breaking news that I missed earlier today. Thank you so much, Mod Mom, for sharing this. Now, this was at 5:22 p.m. So we're going to go through what this tweet says. This is from Mike Cernovich, and then see what else we can find about it. He says police are on scene of a mass shooting threat at a MAGA event at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. So going to go through this real quick. This is from Daily Mail Co. in UK. So real quick, kind of just to break it down. So this threat was made by an anonymous Democratic Socialist supporter on Twitter, and he said, "I'm coming with a gun." The account threatened ahead of a Tuesday meetup, and DC police are investigating, and hotel says security measures are in place. Now, this was a couple hours ago, so I'm going to go through this information and then try to find an update for you guys. So it says police have responded to the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. after an anonymous threat to shoot up a meeting there supporting President Donald Trump. Now, the threat was made ahead of the planned Tuesday evening event by an anonymous Twitter account that supports Democratic Socialists, a far-left political group. And the account wrote, "I am coming with a gun and I expect to get numerous blood-stained MAGA hats as trophies," referencing President Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." Now, the Metropolitan Police Department is investigating the threat, according to department spokesman Hugh Carew. So here is that tweet that says, "I am coming with a gun and expect to get numerous bloodstained MAGA hats as trophies." You can see the picture of the gun there. So on Tuesday evening, Metropolitan Police vehicles were spotted outside of the hotel, and a hotel manager actually confirmed that staff were aware of the threat and taking appropriate security measures. The FBI did not immediately respond to requests for comment from the dailymail.com, and the threat was made by an account that has since been deleted in response to a tweet by conservative writer Cassandra Fairbanks asking who planned to attend the MAGA meetup. So Fairbanks described the monthly meeting as a mix of several different pro-Trump groups, including Virginia Women for Trump, in a post on the Gateway Pundit. And the pro-Trump event was scheduled to begin at 6:30 p.m. and Fairbanks and other conservative figures said they still planned to attend. And going to try to find an update for you guys from that. Looks like there's not too much information on this right now other than the fact that there was a threat on Twitter. But I'm searching a little bit more. I want to find as much information for you guys as possible. And also, this account is called Dreamstar, and so I want to see if they really were deleted. Looks like that account is not showing up in the search results. But it looks like the event still happened and took place. So if I see any more updates about this, I will let you guys know. That looks like all there is right now. Thank you very much, Mod Mom, for sharing that with me. So this is a cool story that the British Patriot shared with me. Thank you so much. And it is from Fox News. It has a picture too, so I'll switch over so you guys can see it. So it is an eagle perching on a Minnesota 9/11 flag display. And you can see the picture right there. So an eagle in Minnesota spent a moment of 9/11 perched in a fitting place on Highway 10. And wanted to quickly shout out. Mod Mom just told me that the Trump Tower story was sent by the viewer Famous Cecil. So thank you so much, Famous Cecil, for sharing that with her to share with me. So here is the eagle in Minnesota. Now, firefighters in Minnesota were in awe Tuesday when an eagle, the ultimate symbol of American patriotism, perched on a 9/11 memorial. And the fire department in Coon Rapids, a town roughly 15 miles north of Minneapolis, set up its aerial ladder from a fire truck on a bridge along Highway 10 to take part in an anniversary tribute. And British Patriot says the video below is awesome, so then we are going to have to watch it.
Hey guys, we're out here live on the Highway 10 bridge. I want to show you what's going on here on the bridge. Look what landed on top of the aerial on 9/11. Isn't that unbelievable? This eagle just landed on the aerial while we're doing the 9/11 memorial. Phenomenal. We're all set up here so nobody forgets. And there goes the eagle. Landed right on top of the aerial. Unbelievable. Have a good day, everybody.
Definitely very cool. Thank you, British Patriot, for sharing that. And I'm sorry my mic was on. There was an echo there. So we're going to watch it one more time. And I'm going to turn that off.
Hey guys, we're out here live on the Highway 10 bridge. I want to show you what's going on here on the bridge. Look what landed on top of the aerial on 9/11. Isn't that unbelievable? This eagle just landed on the aerial while we're doing the 9/11 memorial. Phenomenal. We're all set up here so nobody forgets. And there goes the eagle. Landed right on top of the area. Unbelievable. Have a good day, everybody.
And that is Fire Chief Jerry Streich of the Andover Fire Department. Also want to give a shout out over on YouTube. It looks like Amerty Cell X64 just joined. Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate you and everyone else watching as well. We'll do some shout outs soon. So kind of continuing through this. So the eagle landed on one of the aerials after fire officials set it up and stayed put for less than a minute. But that fire chief was able to capture that fantastic video for us. So still, Chief Jerry Streich of the Andover Fire Department captured the patriotic moment in a Facebook live feed and told news station KARE that the bird had positioned itself around one of the national moments of silence. And he said, "Isn't that unbelievable? This eagle just landed on the aerial while we're doing the 9/11 memorial. Phenomenal." And Streich said that it was the department's 17th annual memorial to 9/11, and that after looking at the bird a few times, he figured he should capture the moment. And he said there's no better symbol to represent America today than a flag, but then for an eagle to land on a fire truck holding a flag, the fire chief said, I mean, it doesn't get much more symbolic than that. Wow, love that. What a fantastic story. Thank you, British Patriot, for finding that and sharing it with us. I'll give you guys one more view of the eagle. And going to switch over real quick. I wanted to take a second for those of you that may not be familiar with Right Side Broadcasting Network to tell you guys a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we are an online news network. Now we are conservative leaning, but we try to be non-biased to give you guys both sides of the story and let you make those informed decisions for yourself. And we are actually blessed to be able to put on broadcasts just like this one and also to travel to President Trump rallies all around the country. Now, President Trump is on the campaign trail for those Republican candidates to keep them in the House and Senate this November at midterm elections. So he travels all around the country endorsing these candidates. Now, as you can imagine, it is very expensive for us to be able to go. We usually send a team of about 3 to 5, so each rally we go to is a minimum of $5,000 for us. Now, it's very expensive, just like I said, and so that includes our travel, whether we, get plane tickets or rent a car, and our lodging and food and gas and just everything. And also, it's a couple $100s for us just to have that live stream up as well with that live view unit. So to enable us to go, to support us, there are different ways you can do that. We are completely donor supported, and so we're really thankful for your donations. One way you can do it is over here on YouTube. All you have to do is click the $sign that is on the super chat. Now you can type a message, and it's really fun because your donation will come up with your name and a personal message, and I'll share it with everyone, of course, as long as it is appropriate, and that's a super fun way to donate. Now, there are a couple other ways on our website as well that are a little bit better, just because on YouTube we get to keep 70% of the donation, but with PayPal we actually get to keep 90% of the donation. So I'm going to real quick show you guys those other ways located on our website. So it's rsbnetwork.com. And you just go to this top red bar, the fourth tab over that says donate. And you can see the different ways that you can donate right here. So the first one is with PayPal, credit or debit card. You can donate that way. And you can also give a monthly donation through Patreon if you would like to become a patron. Maybe you feel more invested with RSBN, you really like what you're seeing, and you want to make sure we can travel to all of these rallies all around the country. You can support on Patreon. I'll give you a quick look at that in case you haven't seen it before. So you just click Become a Patron right here. And then you can see all the different levels, starting out at the entry level option when you are just giving $1 or more a month, and going all the way up to all access if you're donating $500 or more a month. Now there is one last way to donate, and one of our regular viewers who's always here in the chat room, Swoosh for Trump, just commented about it. He said the Tom O'Neill Way, Opelika Road. Yes, you can actually donate with a check and send it right here to our P.O. box in Auburn. So you just write the check out to RSBN. And it is 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344 in Auburn, Alabama 36830. So that is definitely a great way to donate. And looks like I got another article from a viewer. Going to check on that real quick. So the British Patriot sent this to me. Thank you so much, British Patriot. Really appreciate you. And this is from the Daily Wire. And it looks like it actually came out yesterday. So it's from the Daily Wire, like I said. And a newly revealed email shows Google's bias against President Trump in the 2016 election, according to a report. So Fox News host Tucker Carlson revealed in an exclusive segment Monday that a newly obtained email from inside Google allegedly shows the tech giant's pro-Hillary bias during the 2016 election. And Carlson said an email obtained exclusively by this show reveals that a senior Google employee deployed the company's resources to increase voter turnout in ways she believed would help the Clinton campaign win the last election. So the November 9th, 2016 email obtained by Fox News reportedly came from Elena Murillo, the former head of multicultural marketing at Google. So in her email, Murillo touts Google's multifaceted efforts to boost Hispanic in the election, Carlson said. And he said she knows that Latinos voted in record-breaking numbers, especially in states like Florida, Nevada, and Arizona. And Carlson reported that Murillo said that Arizona was a key state for us and bragged that the company used its power to ensure that millions of people saw certain hashtags and social media impressions with the goal of influencing their behavior during the election. Now, the email allegedly states Google supported partners like Voto Latino to pay for rides to polls in key states describing the assistance as a silent donation. Also, it looks like one of my best friends from home, Katie Causey, just joined the chat. Hey, Katie, thank you so much for watching. Love you too, and hope you are doing well today. So Carlson said, Murillo then says that Google helped Voto Latino create ad campaigns to promote those rides. At the end of her email, Murillo makes it clear that Google was working to get Hillary Clinton elected. And the email allegedly states, ultimately, after all was said and done, the Latino community did come out to vote, and that completely surprised us. We never anticipated 29% of Latinos would vote for President Trump. No one did. If you see a Latino Googler in the office, please give them a smile. The email allegedly continues. They're probably hurting right now. You can rest assured that the Latinos of these blue states need your thoughts and prayers for them and their families. Now, the revelation comes as pressure has mounted against the tech giant over its alleged bias against conservatives, and as Twitter and Facebook both face similar concerns from their users. Also wanted to shout out over here on YouTube, we got a $1 donation from Walmart. Thank you for that, Walmart. Appreciate you. So President Trump has played a major role in bringing the issue into the national spotlight with recent tweets accusing Google of bias. I'm sure many of you have seen these, but I'll show it to you again one more time in case you haven't. This was from August 28th, and he says Google search results for Trump news shows only the viewing/reporting of fake news media. In other words, they have it rigged for me and others so that almost all stories and news is bad. Fake CNN is prominent, Republican/conservative, and fair media is shut out. Illegal. 96% of results on Trump news are national left-wing media. Very dangerous. Google and others are suppressing voices of conservatives and hiding information and news that is good. They're controlling what we can and cannot see. This is a very serious situation, will be addressed. Now, a recent report from the Washington Examiner revealed that a newly released study found that 90% of the political donations by Google, YouTube, and other subsidiaries of Alphabet have gone to Democrats. So definitely an interesting article there. Thank you so much, Luke. And let's see, going to switch gears a little bit to everything else that I have prepared for you guys. So some news from Reuters. President Trump to target foreign meddling in U.S. elections with sanctions order. Sources. So President Trump plans to sign an executive order as soon as Wednesday that will slap sanctions on any foreign companies or people who interfere in U.S. elections based on intelligence agency findings, two sources familiar with the matter said. So President Trump's decision coincides with intelligence agencies, military, and law enforcement preparing to defend the November 6 congressional elections from predicted foreign attacks, even as President Trump derides a special counsel investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 elections. So the White House declined to comment. However, sanction targets could include individual people or entire companies accused of interfering in U.S. elections by cyber attacks or other means, a U.S. official told Reuters. And this official said the administration is keen to set a new norm in cyberspace. This is a first step in stating boundaries and publicly announcing our response for bad behavior. Now, the order represents the latest in a series of Trump administration efforts to look tough on election security before voting in November that will decide whether President Trump's Republican Party can keep its majorities in both the U.S. House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, this order will put a range of agencies in charge of deciding if meddling occurred, led by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and including the CIA, the National Security Agency, and the Homeland Security Department, sources said. So based on a recent draft of the order reviewed by a U.S. official, it will require any federal agency aware of election interference by foreigners to take the information to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So election interference will be defined in order as hacking attempts against election infrastructure and efforts to sway public opinion through coordinated digital propaganda or systematic leaks of private political information. Now, U.S. intelligence officials have found that in the campaign leading up to the 2016 U.S. presidential election, Russian hackers breached the Democratic National Committee and leaked confidential information. Now, the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal previously reported on earlier drafts of the executive order. So Congress has been purposefully left out of the executive order drafting process, the official said, because the administration wants to preempt legislation being considered in the House and Senate that addresses similar issues. And U.S. lawmakers have introduced various pieces of Russia-related legislation, including the Deter Act, to set out punishments for election meddling in what one lawmaker called a sanctions bill from hell to punish Moscow for cybercrime and its activities in Syria, Ukraine, and elsewhere. So both Democrats and Republicans are looking to redress what they consider President Trump's weak stance on accusations of Russian interference in 2016 when he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin at a summit in July. And President Trump stunned the world by accepting Putin's denials over the word of his own intelligence agencies. But as you know, the next day he said that that was not what he meant to say. So Congress passed a Russia sanctions bill more than a year ago, and some lawmakers, including some Republicans as well as Democrats, have chafed at what they saw as the administration's reluctance to implement it. And President Trump signed the bill only after Congress passed it with huge majorities. So acting on that law, the U.S. Treasury imposed major sanctions against 24 Russians, striking at allies of Putin in one of Washington's most aggressive moves to punish Moscow. So while we are talking politics, another story from Reuters, Republicans are urging more tax cuts as elections near. So with congressional elections looming, Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives on Monday proposed more deficit expanding tax cuts, an effort seen by some tax experts as unlikely to become law and geared chiefly toward winning votes. So even if this initiative fails to pass, it could put Democrats in the position of opposing the new tax cut plan on the House floor, which Republicans could seek to use to their advantage in the November 6 elections, where control of Congress will be at stake. So under this measure, federal individual income tax cuts approved on a temporary basis by the Republican-controlled Congress and President Trump in December would become permanent. So it would actually also eliminate the maximum age for some retirement account contributions and let new businesses write off more startup costs. So House Tax Committee Chairman Kevin Brady, the main author of the Tax Reform 2.0 package, plans to put it to a committee-level vote on Thursday with a full House vote expected by October 1st. Now, President Trump and his Republicans are touting December's tax cuts as a boost to the economy, an important feature of their campaign push to defend their majorities in the House and U.S. Senate against a challenge from Democrats. And Democrats say those cuts mainly helped the wealthy and corporations. Now, in a statement on Monday, House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi said, with version 2.0 of the GOP tax scam for the rich, Republicans want to add even more to the deficit and even more to the bank accounts of the wealthiest 1%. Now, the cuts passed in December are projected to add an estimated $1.5 trillion over a decade to the federal deficit, the difference between Washington's spending and the taxes it collects. So the new round being proposed by Republicans would add a further $576 billion to the deficit, even taking possibly higher economic growth into account, according to the Tax Foundation, a pro-business think tank in Washington. So the investment firm Keefe, Bruyette, and Woods said in a Monday note to clients, regardless of the merits of the House GOP plan, we may view it as a political move ahead of midterm elections that has no chance of passing Congress in the short term. And John Gimigliano, if I said that right, who heads the federal tax legislative and regulatory services at the audit, tax, and advisory firm KPMG LLP, said adding another several $100 billion to the deficit is something that I think some Republicans are going to have to think very hard about. Passage is not automatic. And when wondering if this is a winning issue, Republican lawmakers and strategists hope a new tax debate will amplify the party's upbeat economic message. And they tout a report by the Tax Foundation that forecasts the creation of 1.5 million jobs and wage increases if the temporary individual tax cuts are made permanent. So Matt Gorman, who's a spokesman for the National Republican Congressional Committee, said anytime we're talking about tax cuts and the growing economy, we're winning. And he said he's a spokesman for the National Republican Congressional Committee, and this is the party's main campaign support for House Republican candidates. So still, some Republicans from Democratic-leaning states worry that constituents already dislike December's cap on the federal deduction for state and local tax payments known as SALT. So a dozen House Republicans opposed the Tax Cuts and Job Acts last December, and all but one were from high tax Democratic states such as New York, New Jersey, and California. And the new package would make the capped SALT deduction permanent. So under President Trump and the Republican-controlled Congress, the federal deficit has begun growing rapidly again and is expected to blow through $1 trillion in 2019. Now, if that happens, it would be the first time since 2012 the U.S. economy would have to support such a large deficit, highlighting a basic shift for the Republican Party, which once prided itself on fiscal conservatism. So would love to know what you guys think about this, about these possible tax cuts. I know many of you on YouTube are saying that this would be a great thing. Please let me know your thoughts. And also wanted to shout out some viewers over on Facebook. If you are still watching, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Frank Zawirba, if I said that right, thank you for joining. Jody, Randy, I'm just going to say some first names. Denise, Butch, Albert, Sherry, Raquel, Vivian, Latrell, and Greg Ash, my dad, if you're watching, thank you very much. And also over on YouTube, wanted to shout out real quick some of our moderators that are in the chat room. B. Neal is here, Real Frank in Florida, and Jan, thank you so much for being here tonight. And I know Mod Mom was here earlier, probably still is. And RSBN cameraman. Also, some of those regular members. Zoom is here in the chat room, and JC. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really, really appreciate you guys. And thank you for watching and just supporting us. And also wanted to give a shout out to those website moderators, Reculp, Common Sense, and Glenn O. Thank you guys so much for keeping our website clean and fun. Really appreciate you guys for that. And checking my Twitter messages real quick just to make sure I don't have any more updates from you guys. And it looks like about an hour ago, President Trump tweeted out his statement about September 11th. So going to pull that up and share it with you guys. And we'll go through some of his other tweets from the day. I know you guys always love going through the Trump tweets. It's very fun.
It's September 11th, and as I stand on the really beautiful lawn of the Rose Garden at the White House, I think of the 3,000 lives lost with the horrible attack on New York City, the World Trade Center, and indeed the attack on our nation. And when I speak of the World Trade Center, I speak as a New Yorker, but I also think as not only a New Yorker, but as an American, of the Pentagon and all the lives lost. And also, I just left Shanksville, Pennsylvania, incredible place. And these were really great heroes that fought so hard that the plane didn't do damage to either the White House or the Capitol or wherever it was headed. So whether it's Shanksville or the Pentagon or the World Trade Center, these were 3,000 incredible people. We never will let this happen again.
So hopefully you guys could hear that okay. Let me know if you did. I know it looked a little low. But he said that, you know, whether it's the Pentagon or the field in Shanksville or the World Trade Center, these are 3,000 people that we'll never forget, 3,000 incredible people, and that we will never let this happen again. So definitely an encouraging word. And so now we're going to take a second and go through his tweets. So he started out by tweeting this morning, "We have found nothing to show collusion between President Trump and Russia. Absolutely zero. But every day we get more documentation showing the collusion between the FBI and Department of Justice, the Hillary campaign, foreign spies, and Russians. Incredible." And this was from Sarah Carter, DC, and Lou Dobbs. And then he tweeted out that proclamation that he signed. He retweeted Dan Scavino's tweet of the proclamation, which I already shared with you guys, so we're not going to go through that again. But Dan Scavino said President Donald J. Trump signs a proclamation at his desk in the Oval Office designating Patriot Day 2018 to honor the memories of the nearly 3,000 lives lost on September 11th, 2001, and of every hero who has given their life since that day to protect our safety and freedom. And then he tweeted out, "News struck page text reveal media leak strategy. So terrible, and nothing is being done at Department of Justice or FBI, but the world is watching and they get it completely." He then tweeted out, "Eric Holder could be running the Justice Department right now, and it would be behaving no differently than it is," at Lou Dobbs. And then he tweeted out, referencing September 11th, "Rudy Giuliani did a great job as mayor of New York City during the period of September 11th. His leadership, bravery, and skill must never be forgotten. Rudy is a true warrior." Then he tweeted out, "Departing Washington, D.C. to attend a Flight 93 September 11th memorial service in Shanksville, Pennsylvania with Melania. Hashtag never forget." Then he tweeted out, 17 years since September 11th. And this is cool. Jack Pacific posted picture. President Trump from September 11th. And then he shared an article from Breitbart, "Small Business Optimism Soars to Highest Level Ever." And I want to share that with you guys because if it is important enough for President Trump to tweet about it, then it is important enough for us to know what he's talking about. So this is from Breitbart. titled Small Business Optimism Soars to Highest Level Ever, and it just came out today. The optimism of American small business owners soared to the highest level on the records in August. The National Federation of Independent Small Business Optimism Index jumped to 108.8 in August, setting a new record in the survey's 45-year history. The previous record was set in July 1983. And the NFIB president and CEO, Juanita D. Duggan, said today's groundbreaking numbers are demonstrative of what I'm hearing every day from small business owners, that business is booming. As the tax and regulatory landscape changed, so did small business expectations and plans. And businesses are seeing better sales, with a net 10% reporting higher nominal sales in the past 3 months compared to the prior 3 months, up to 2 points. And August is the 9th consecutive strong month of reported sales gains after years of low or negative numbers, according to the NFIB. So the net percent of business owners planning to build inventories rose 6 points to a record 10%, and reports of positive profit trends rose to the highest reading in the survey's 45-year history. So the NFIB chief economist Bill Dunkelberg said at the beginning of this historic run, index gains were dominated by expectations. Good time to expand, expected real sales, inventory satisfaction, expected credit conditions, and expected business conditions. Now the index is dominated by real business activity that makes GDP grow, job creation plans, job openings, strong capital spending plans, record inventory investment plans, and earnings. Small business is clearly helping to drive that 4% growth in the domestic economy. And the share of small business owners saying it's a good time to expand tied the May 2018 all-time high. Now, sorry, I am talking to my producer as well, but I got a couple messages from you guys on Twitter. I really value those, and I'm really thankful for those stories, and so I'm going to check those real quick. Got definitely an interesting article from one of our viewers that we have already heard from today, Rick Bulow. Thank you so much, Rick. And this is from PJ Media. And it is that James Dobson endorses the Convention of States to fight DC's sexual revolution agenda. So on Monday, the James Dobson Family Institute endorsed the Convention of States project, urging Christians to defend the Constitution by reigning in the federal government. And as Constitution day approaches, JDFI has endorsed a convention to return to the Constitution's checks and balances on the federal government. And in case you have not seen James Dobson before, I'll throw up a picture of him. Okay. So James Dobson, the former CEO of Focus on the Family and the founder of the Family Research Council, told PJ Media, "I beg the evangelical community to get involved in the Convention of States project and understand what can be done to preserve and protect our fundamental rights." And he said, "This is something every individual and family can do today." He argued that the Convention of States would enable evangelical Christians to defend key religious and personal rights against government encroachment. And he said, "This is my right to worship as I want. This is my right to raise my children as my spouse, and I feel we should, and my right to assemble with others." And Dobson admitted that all those things are protected in the Constitution, but it is changing in Washington. So in case you're wondering, because I was wondering myself, the Convention of States is a national effort to call a convention under Article 5 of the United States Constitution, restricted to proposing amendments that will impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit its power and jurisdiction, and impose term limits on its officials and members of Congress. So Dobson admitted that all the things that he had just said are protected in the Constitution, but it is changing in Washington. So in a joint statement, Dobson and other JDFI leaders denounced the insidious power grab underway in our nation's capital for many years. And they warned that unelected bureaucrats, activist judges, and the ever-expanding scope, reach, and invasion of the federal government into the lives of all Americans has far surpassed what our founders ever intended. So this is according to Jenna Lynn Ellis, who's a director of the Dobson Policy Center, and she's an author. She said the James Dobson Family Institute endorsing the Convention of States project aligns with the conservative biblical idea that family advocates need to push back against Washington, D.C. bureaucrats forcing the sexual revolution agenda through government, particularly the Supreme Court. So she mentioned judicial activism beyond the margins of constitutional authority, including such cases as Griswold versus Connecticut, Roe versus Wade, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and Obergefell versus Hodges. And these cases pushed contraception, abortion, and same-sex marriage. Now, Ellis explained a convention of states has the ability to viably and ably address judicial activism and rein in the federal government's usurpation of the Constitution's original limited powers. And Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution lays out the process of amending the Constitution. And the process begins either when 2/3 of both houses of Congress agree to propose an amendment, or when the legislatures of 2/3 of the states call for a convention. So at the convention, each state would have one vote, and if 26 states agree to any one amendment, that amendment would be sent to the states Amendments must be ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the states or by 3/4 of the states in the conventions. So as former Senator Jim DeMette put it, the founders anticipated this moment where we have a runaway government. They gave states the ability to rein in the federal government through Article 5. And wow, it looks like we just received a donation over on YouTube. Thank you so much from Debo. $4.99. He donated $4.99. He said, I like Right Side Broadcast. Good work. If only everyone could donate $1 that subscribe, you all could buy your satellite truck. Thank you so much. And he says, Wu-Tang for life. Wow, thank you so much, Debo, for that donation. Really appreciate you. And I love your suggestion. Yes, everyone should donate $1 so we can get our satellite truck. Thank you. So going back to this article from PJ Media, Ellis also argued Christians should understand clearly what a convention of states is constitutionally intended to do, understand what the limitations are, and help in their states to call for a convention of states. She said, for the Christian, we can believe in God and believe strongly that our government should protect our God-given rights, but genuine faith requires us to act on our own belief also. So referencing James 2 from the Bible, she said she insisted that faith is belief plus action because James 2 says that faith without works is dead. And she argued that being faithful guardians of the freedoms God gives us in a nation whose government supports our right to protect our liberty is part of being loyal to God. So she also added, parents have a duty to raise their children according to the truth. In protecting parental rights and all other rights by protecting our Constitution is part of being a Christian. She also said Dr. Dobson has been a key voice encouraging faith-based families to actively participate in our government. And according to Ellis, Dobson views the Convention of States as the next critical step to preserving our Constitution and freedom. And Dobson and Ellis encouraged individual Christians and their families to visit conventionofstates.com and sign up to join a growing list of citizens calling for a return of federal power back to the states. This would be the ultimate way to challenge the entrenched powers in Washington. And on Constitution Day, September 17th, Ellis and Mark Meckler, who is a co-founder of Tea Party Patriots and an advocate for the Convention of States, will join Dobson on his Family Talk radio broadcast for a 2-day discussion about the convention. So look out for that. Thank you so much, Rick Bulow, for sharing that with us. Really appreciate you. And wow, over on YouTube, we just received a $5 donation from Larry Stokes. Thank you so much, Larry. Really appreciate that. That'll definitely help us get to our next rally, which we're hoping and thinking it's going to be next week now. Stay tuned for that. So kind of switching gears a little bit here, I found this one really interesting, and this is from Politico. So George W. Bush is actually hitting the campaign trail to fundraise for GOP candidates. So former President George W. Bush is hitting the fundraising circuit for a handful of Republican House and Senate candidates, joining the party's push to maintain its congressional majorities. So Bush has maintained a low profile since leaving office in 2009, Yet, as the midterm campaign season enters its final weeks and the party braces for the prospect of a Trump-fueled wave, Bush, who has been critical of the president, is putting his muscle behind Republicans in heated races. So his tour is actually beginning tomorrow morning when he holds a closed-door event in Fort Worth for GOP Representative Will Hurd, a second-term congressman who faces the hurdle of seeking re-election in a West Texas district that President Trump lost in 2016. So then, on Friday, Bush will travel to Florida to hold a pair of events for Florida Governor Rick Scott, who is in a pitched battle for a Senate seat. And one of the fundraisers will benefit New Republican, a pro-Scott super political action committee. So Bush will return to the circuit next week when he headlines a September 19th fundraiser in Fort Worth for North Dakota Senate hopeful Kevin Cramer. Now, the following day, Bush will hold a Dallas fundraiser for Texas Representative Pete Sessions. So Sessions, who occupies a rapidly actually diversifying suburban Dallas district, is embroiled in one of the most competitive races in the country. Now, Sessions has said that he's eager to campaign with Bush, who has a personal interest in the contest. He is a resident of the district, and it's where his presidential library is located. So next month, former President Bush will host fundraisers for two Senate hopefuls, Josh Hawley of Missouri and Mike Braun of Indiana. And Freddie Ford, a Bush spokesman, said while he prefers to consider himself retired from politics, President Bush recognizes how important it is to keep the Senate and decided to help a few key candidates. Now, Bush's foray comes as another former president, Barack Obama, launches a nationwide push for Democratic candidates. But unlike Obama, who's been holding public rallies, Bush's events will be closed-door affairs, and each of the fundraisers are private. So while Obama has forcefully thrashed President Trump in recent days, Bush has been tighter-lipped about his feelings toward the current president. But in October 2017, Bush, without mentioning President Trump's name, delivered a speech that was widely regarded as a rebuke of Trumpism. And he said at the time, "We've seen nationalism distorted into nativism, forgotten the dynamism that immigration has always brought to America. We see a fading confidence in the value of free markets and international trade, forgetting that conflict, instability, and poverty follow in the wake of protectionism." So really interesting that he will be hitting the trail again. So also some interesting world news from Reuters. U.S. voices concern on China's Muslim crackdown, sanctions weighed. So the U.S. State Department on Tuesday expressed a deep concern over China's worsening crackdown on minority Muslims in the, I want to say this right, Xinjiang region, as the Trump administration considered sanctions against Chinese senior officials and companies linked to alleged human rights abuses. So discussions have gained momentum recently within the U.S. government over possible economic penalties in response to reports of mass detentions, ethnic Uyghurs, and other Muslims, which has prompted a growing international outcry, U.S. congressional sources said. And any sanctions decision would be a rare move on human rights grounds by the Trump administration against China, with which it's engaged in a major trade war while also seeking Beijing's help to resolve a standoff over North Korea's nuclear weapons. So a U.S. official said the idea of sanctions was still in the discussion stage, and one of the congressional sources said a decision did not appear to be imminent. So the State Department spokeswoman, Heather Nauert, told a news briefing "We're deeply troubled by the worsening crackdown, not just on Uyghurs, but also Kazakhs, other Muslims in that region of China." And she acknowledged that the State Department had received a letter from a bipartisan group of U.S. lawmakers at the end of August asking Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to impose sanctions on a number of Chinese officials accused of overseeing the policies. So those included Chen Quango, Communist Party chief in Xinjiang, and also a member of the party's Politburo. So also under consideration are sanctions the lawmakers sought against several Chinese companies involved in actually building detention camps and creating surveillance system used to track and monitor Uyghurs, according to one of the congressional sources. So Nauert said, "We have a lot of tools at our disposal, but I'm not going to get ahead of any potential activity that the U.S. government may take. We're not going to preview any sanctions that may or may not happen." So the Washington-based Uyghur Human Rights Project tweeted a photo of activist Dolkun Issa, president of the World Uyghur Congress, at the White House on Monday, along with the comment, "A meeting with White House officials today provided much needed encouragement for Uyghur human rights activists." So China earlier on Tuesday called for United Nations Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet to respect its sovereignty after she urged Beijing to allow monitors into the restive far western region and expressed concern about the situation there. So Beijing has said Xinjiang faces a serious threat from Islamist militants and separatists who plot attacks and stir up tension between the mostly Muslim Uyghur minority, who calls the region home, and members of the Han Chinese majority. So last month, a UN rights panel said it had received credible reports that up to 1 million ethnic Uyghurs may be held in extra-legal detention in Xinjiang and called them to be freed. And Nauert said these are credible reports out there that many thousands have been detained in the detention centers since April 2017, and the numbers are fairly significant from what we can tell so far. So U.S. sanctions could be imposed under the Global Magnitsky Act, a federal law that allows U.S. government to target human rights violators around the world with freezes on any U.S. assets, U.S. travel bans, and prohibitions on Americans doing business with them. So also, while we're on world news, another story from Reuters. So Russia starting the biggest war games since the Soviet fall near China. So Russia began its biggest war games since the fall of the Soviet Union on Tuesday, close to its border with China, mobilizing 300,000 troops in a show of force that will include joint exercises with the Chinese army. And wow, we just received a $50 donation from Cornish Gamehead. Thank you so much for that. Who says, we're watching you tonight on the break room big screen at the U.S. Steel Corps in Gary, Indiana. Good job, Alyssa and team. Thank you so much, Cornish Gamehead. Really, really appreciate you and your donation and support. What a blessing to us. That'll definitely help us get to our next rally next week. So thank you very much for sharing. So glad that you guys are watching. So China and Russia have staged joint drills before, but not on such a large scale. And the Vostok 2018 exercise signals closer military ties, as well as sending an unspoken reminder to Beijing that Moscow is able and ready to defend its sparsely populated Far East. So Vostok 2018 is taking place at a time of heightened tension between the West and Russia, and NATO has said it will monitor the exercise closely, as well as the United States, which has a strong military presence in the Asia-Pacific region. So Russia's Ministry of Defense broadcast images on Tuesday of columns of tanks, armored vehicles, and warships on the move, and combat helicopters and fighter aircraft taking off. So in one clip, Marines from Russia's Northern Fleet and a motorized Arctic brigade were actually shown disembarking from a large landing ship on a barren shore opposite Alaska. Now, this activity was part of the first stage of the exercise, which runs until September 17th, the ministry said in a statement. Now, it involved deploying additional forces to Russia's Far East and a naval buildup involving its Northern and Pacific fleets. So the main aim was to check the military's readiness to move troops large distances, to test how closely infantry and naval forces cooperated, and to perfect command and control procedures. So later stages will involve rehearsals of both defensive and offensive scenarios. So Russia also staged a major naval exercise in the eastern Mediterranean this month, and its jets resumed bombing the Syrian region of Idlib, the last major enclave of rebels fighting its ally, President Bashar al-Assad. So the location of the main training range for Vostok 2018, 5,000 kilometers east of Moscow, means it's likely to be watched closely by Japan, North and South Korea, as well as by China and Mongolia, both of whose armies will take part in the maneuvers later this week. So analysts say Moscow had to invite the Chinese and Mongolian militaries given the proximity of the war games to their borders, and because the skill meant the neighboring countries would probably have seen them as a threat had they been excluded. So the exercise, which will involve more than 1,000 military aircraft, 2 Russian naval fleets, up to 36,000 tanks and armored vehicles, and all Russian airborne units, began as President Vladimir Putin held talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping in the Russian port city of Vladivostok. So relations between Moscow and Beijing have long been marked by mutual wariness, with Russian nationalists warning of encroaching Chinese influence in the country's mineral-rich Far East. But Russia pivoted east towards China after the West sanctioned Moscow over its annexation of Ukraine's Crimea region in 2014, and trade links between the two, who share a land border over 4,200 kilometers long, have blossomed since. So Russia broadcast footage of some 24 helicopters and 6 jets belonging to the Chinese Air Force landing at Russian air bases for the exercise. And Beijing has said 3,200 members of the People's Liberation Army will join in. So some experts see the war games as a message to Washington, with which both Moscow and Beijing have strained ties. So with its Vostok 2018 exercise, Russia sends a message that it regards the U.S. as a potential enemy and China as a potential ally. This is according to Dmitry Trenin, who is a former Russia Army colonel and director of the Carnegie Moscow Center think tank. And he said, China, by sending a PLA element to train with the Russians, is signaling that U.S. pressure is pushing it towards much closer military cooperation with Moscow. Now, Putin, who is Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief, is expected to observe the exercises this week alongside Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, who is overseeing them. And Shoigu has said they are the biggest since the Soviet military exercise Zapad 81 in 1981. So we will just have a couple more articles before I wrap it up. So some national news, and this is from Fox News. Washington State is actually in a legal battle with 6 states after it refuses to build a coal export terminal. So a lawsuit has pitted 6 landlocked states against Washington State over a simple question: who owns the federal ports? So Washington State is denying the states the permits required to build a large coal export terminal along the Columbia River. And the states have sued, and Washington filed a motion for dismissal. But U.S. District Court Judge Robert Bryan rejected Washington State's motion, setting the stage for a legal showdown over who really gets final say over which products flow through the nation's seaports. So Montana Attorney General Tim Fox said, "We're talking about the Constitution and the rule of law. One state can't discriminate against another state's commodities in this way." And Montana and Wyoming are leading plaintiffs and the largest coal-producing states in the country. The Powder River Basin contains 2.5 billion tons of recoverable coal and currently supplies 40% of the coal used in the United States. But as many states wean themselves off of electricity from burning coal, coal companies are looking to boost exports primarily to Asia. But they have a major problem. There are no ports along the West Coast currently set up to load coal onto ships. So 4 other states, Kansas, Utah, South Dakota, and Nebraska, have joined the lawsuit against Washington State. So the Millennium Bulk Terminal, proposed for the port in Longview, Washington, was supposed to solve that obstacle. It was designed to export 44 million metric tons of coal a year, and important allies and trading partners, Japan and South Korea, were eager to buy the coal. But after conducting an environmental impact study, the state of Washington denied the terminal a required water permit. So Washington's Democratic Governor Jay Inslee said, "I think we're on solid ground because we're enforcing our environmental rules for clean air and noise and some other issues." So the Washington Ecology Department cited a slight increase in cancer risk to Longview residents due to increased diesel emissions from additional train traffic, significant vehicle traffic delays, noise, the destruction of 24 acres of wetlands, and a 25% increase in ship traffic on the Columbia River. And an ecology spokesman denies rejecting the coal terminal because of any bias against the coal or the environmental impacts caused by burning the coal in Asia. So Ecology's spokesman, Dave Bennett, said it is insulting to all Washington residents that proponents of this facility have chosen to minimize and ridicule the impact diesel emissions from the largest operation of the largest coal export facility in North America would have had on the people of Cowlitz County. But Governor Jay Inslee makes no secret for his disdain for coal. In his 2007 book, Apollo's Fire, Igniting America's Clean Energy Economy, he wrote, "Coal is killing us. If we fail to restrain growth of CO2 emissions, all 6 billion of us on this little spaceship are at risk." So there is an update on that legal battle right now. And I want to switch over to some positive stories that were sent to me by viewers. I actually have 2 positive stories to end tonight with. And one from one of our viewers, John Mitchell. Thank you so much for sending this my way. And it is actually from Canada. So I'm going to switch over so you guys can see a picture of it. This is from jalopnik.com. So a car sells 3 times in one auction as bidders rally to help orphaned children. So after their son and daughter-in-law died in a motorcycle crash earlier this year, a Canadian couple decided to put their son's Pontiac, I want to say it right, Parisen, up for auction to help raise his 2 young children. But instead of buying the car, bidders donated roughly $76,000 in an emotional showing of support. So according to the news site, Canadian couple Brent and Nicole Carey Luke died in May after their motorcycle was involved in a crash with a truck in a small town near Red Deer, Alberta. The 2 were in their mid-30s and are survived by 2 children aged 3 and 6. So the children are now being taken care of by family members, including their grandparents, who, to help pay for the children's medical costs, decided to sell their late son's 1973 Pontiac Parisienne at an auction. And that's where, after the auction house explained why the grandparents were selling a vehicle that was originally meant to go to a 3-year-old when he turned 18, someone bought the car and then donated it back. And then someone else bought it and also returned it. And then a 3rd person bought the car and gave it back. So they weren't low bids either. The first person bought the car for about $22,000. The second spent about $23,000 and the third paid about $15,000, only to return the vehicle to the family so that the young boy can sometime drive his father's Pontiac. So in total, Global News says that between these 3 generous gestures and other donations, folks attending the electric garage auctions raised about $76,000 for the 2 children. That is such a sweet, sweet story. And one more from the British Patriot. Thank you for sharing this with us. So a police officer pumps and pays for elderly woman's gas, viral Facebook post shows. And you can see the picture here of the police officer and the elderly woman. So a viral Facebook post describes how a police officer helped out an elderly woman in a big way during an encounter at a gas station on Friday. And Seth Kaz, who is the Citgo gas owner in St. Clair Shores, Michigan, recalled an elderly woman came into my station today and gave me $3 in change to put on her gas pump. And Kaz added that a nearby officer was listening and saw she was using a cane, struggling to walk back to her car. So this is that viral Facebook post from Seth Kaz. And I'm going to go through that with you real quick. He says, an elderly woman came into my station today and gave me $3 in change to put on her gas pump. A police officer was standing behind her and happened to hear the amount and saw she was using a cane, struggling to walk back to her car. He went outside and told her to sit in the car as he would pump the gas for her. After a few minutes of getting to know one another, he realized she was really struggling and didn't have any gas or money left. The $3 will only get her so far. He told her to hang tight, came inside and put her another 20 out of his pocket. He went back and finished pumping, and she told him her husband had recently passed away and she's stuck paying all their bills and is behind every month. The $20 really helped her. She would have most likely ended up running out of gas. Nowadays, there's so much negativity toward police officers. No one respects them. We all hear complaints and bad stories. I'm not saying every officer is perfect. I'm sure some are at fault at times. We all make mistakes, but we should all respect, appreciate, and thank them for what they do. Leaving your family every day to try and make sure everyone else is safe can be tough. Think about it. Who do you call when you're in danger? Who's running in harm's way as you're running away? To all the women and men in blue, thank you for your service. Cadillac is not hers. The car is being borrowed. And then he even says to make a donation. And there is a GoFundMe page. Wow, of helping that elderly lady. There was a $5,000 goal, and this page has already reached $22,623. So amazing, so awesome that that gas station owner started that page. So what a great way to end our night with some really positive stories. Thank you again to our viewers that sent those, and thank you guys so much for tuning in. So appreciate each and every single one of you, your comments, your feedback, your donations. Thank you for helping RSBN thrive and survive. Really, really appreciate each and every one of you guys, and stay tuned tomorrow as we continue our coverage of Hurricane Florence and just some other coverage as well. So appreciate each and every single one of you. Thank you for donating. Thank you for supporting and watching. And don't forget to share this stream. And once again, for Right Side Broadcasting Network, I'm Alyssa Ashe. Have a blessed night.